In this lecture, we are discussing what are Firebase Cloud Functions, because we're going to be using Firebase Cloud Functions heavily in our project. Cloud Functions for Firebase is a serverless framework that lets you automatically run backend code in response to events triggered by Firebase and HTTPS requests. So if a user wants to trigger an event like turn on a light bulb, you can automatically run a response with Cloud Functions. JavaScript or TypeScript code is stored in the Google Cloud and runs in a managed environment. You don't have to manage or scale your own server because Firebase is handling that for you. To read more, go to firebase.google.com/docs/functions. This is the Firebase documentation, and there's a section on Cloud Functions for Firebase. So some key capabilities of Cloud Functions. You can integrate the Firebase platform. So the functions can respond to events triggered by Firebase and Google Cloud features, like authentication. When a user wants to log in, you can authenticate them to make sure they put in the correct credentials, as well as cloud storage triggers and more. You can integrate across Firebase features with the Admin Software Development Kit and Cloud Functions. You can also integrate with third-party services with your own webhooks, which is what we'll be doing in our project. We're going to be writing webhooks. Cloud Functions minimize the amount of code you have to write, so it's easier to use Firebase and Google Cloud in your function. There's zero maintenance. You just have to deploy your code to the servers with one command from the command line. After that, Firebase will automatically scale up the computing resources to match how many users you have. You don't have to worry about credentials, server configuration, provisioning new servers, or decommissioning old servers. As well, with Cloud Functions, your logic is private and secure. The Cloud Functions are fully insulated from the client, so you don't have to worry about any tampering on the client side. Right? So you also don't have to worry about reverse engineering from your clients of your code. So how do Cloud Functions work? Well, when you write and deploy a function, Google's servers will begin to manage the function. You can call the function with an HTTP request or have a background function where Google's servers will listen for events and run the function when it's triggered. As the load increases or decreases, Google will respond by scaling the number of virtual server instances that are needed to run your function. Each function runs in isolation in its own environment with its own configuration. So the life cycle looks like this. You write the code for a new function and define when should this function execute. When you deploy the function, the Firebase command line interface creates an archive of the function code, which is uploaded to the Google Cloud storage bucket in your Firebase project. Cloud Build retrieves the function code and builds the function source. And you can view the build logs in the Google Cloud console. The container image for the functions code is uploaded to a private container registry in your project, and your new function can be used. When an event matches the function's conditions, the code of the function is called. So when a user wants to turn on a toaster, well, that is the event that will trigger the function toaster should turn on, or turn on toaster. So the function will only be called when its event or its conditions are met. If the function is busy with many events, Google creates more instances to handle the work faster. If you have few events, then the instances are cleaned up. When you update the function, then instances of the old versions are cleaned up along with the build artifacts in Cloud Storage and Container Registry, so you can update your functions with new versions. When you delete the function, all instances and zip archives are cleaned up, as well as the build artifacts. The connection between the function and the event provider is removed, so the function is gone. It will no longer be called. You can also listen for events with background function, so Google can listen for when a function should be triggered based on background events or conditions. Like if the weather becomes sunny, then you should turn on some music. The function would be the music starts playing. The event is that it suddenly or eventually becomes sunny outside. You can also call functions directly with an HTTP request or a call from your client. So this would be, for example, if your app user wants to rent an apartment, then they could call your app to perform that request for the renting. And then you could call the function that would handle that event. So there are many ways that functions can be triggered. So to implement a cloud function, first you have to install the Firebase command line interface, which we will do together, and then initialize cloud functions in your Firebase project. Then you write your functions in JavaScript or TypeScript to handle events from Firebase services, Google Cloud services, or similar. So you write the functionality that you want to handle. Then you can test your functions, deploy, and monitoring. So in order to use cloud functions, you do have to have a billing account, which is free to have, and it will only start charging you if you go above the limits, which are quite large. So for learning and for testing purposes, in our project, we will need the billing account to actually use cloud functions, but we won't be using enough to actually be billed. So you have to enable billing and then deploy your functions with the Firebase command line interface. Then your functions will be ready to use, and you can search through the Firebase console to see what happens every time you call the function. And you can verify that your functions are working as expected. Right, so that is an introduction to cloud functions. You can read more about what you can do with cloud functions as well. With cloud functions, you have access to Firebase and Google Cloud events, as well as scalable computing power. Some examples are to notify users, to perform database maintenance, to execute intensive tasks in the cloud instead of using all your app resources, and to integrate third-party services and APIs. You can call functions directly or trigger background functions, and later in this course we'll learn how to write functions and how to test functions. If you liked this video, then go to training.mammoethinteractive.com. We have tons more content on blockchain, web development, machine learning, and much more. We also have a membership for just $19 a month where you can get access to our 372 course bundle and counting.